All right, does that look like a real bird to you? It's flapping its wings, it's flying around, it looks like a real bird. And that's the point, folks. That bird that you just saw is actually a drone constructed with the body of a taxidermied bird. Are you following me? And it's stuffed with technology to make it move like it's still alive and real. And trust me, we absolutely know how this sounds. And that's why we sent Griffin Rushton to Socorro to find out exactly what researchers at New Mexico Tech are planning to do with these appropriately called Frankenstein devices.
Well, that's at least what we're calling them. And I'll tell you, look, I learned a lot down there today. And let's clear one thing up right away. Some of you may already be thinking about the birds aren't real conspiracy theory. Well, researchers told me there are absolutely no plans to use these bird drones to spy on people, but there are plans to spy on some animals out in the wilderness, and there's even a few practical uses that could help make flying a little safer.
A very tiny version of this.
After years of trying to replicate how birds fly,
it's heavy and then it feels so real.
Mechanical engineer Dr. Mustafa Hassanalian figured he could borrow some blueprints from Mother Nature.
We saw that maybe it's a good idea to use the whole body of the birds because everything is there and we just need to do a reverse engineering and turn them to a drone.
Yeah, you heard that right. These abnormal-looking birds are actually drones built from the bodies of taxidermy birds and retrofitted with robotic technology allowing them to move and fly like real birds, and that's the point.
The current drones that are being used for wildlife monitoring, like hexacopter or quadcopter, they create lots of noise, and animals will be scared and scatter.
But these drones blend in, well, at least most of them, giving wildlife researchers an eye inside the flock.
Developing this technology can fly with the flock, can give us more information about the physics of the flight of the birds, how birds with different colors, they can be more efficient. So this technology can help us to learn about how birds extract energy from the atmosphere or how they can save energy through their flight.
There's also aquatic drones, like this duck. But researchers at the New Mexico Institute of Mining and Technology know the real-world potential for these mostly inconspicuous drones is sky high, especially at airports prone to bird strikes.
Imagine that we do this with the predator birds and you fly that around the airports and you no longer see those birds around the airplanes, and that can save the birds as well as the airplanes.
Border security is also on the table.
The drones that are currently being used for border patrolling, sometimes they shoot down by like illegals, right? So this technology can help because they're birds and we can fly them and they can be used for monitoring.
But Hassanalian draws the line when it comes to surveillance.
That has not been our intention at all. We are not looking at that application because we don't think that's an efficient way and it's not moral, it's not ethical.
Hassanalian says he's working to develop a drone major at New Mexico Tech in hopes innovative projects like this inspire younger students to look to the skies.
And I think things that we are trying to build here, it can help to create a pathway for future generation of students that they want to do their career in aerospace industry.
Dr. Hassanalian says there's a new drone research facility under construction at New Mexico Tech, and he says he's interested in branching out to some other animals, potentially drone snakes and drone frogs, a lot for the same reasons there.
You know, it really takes the whole when pigs fly thing into reality.
For real.
So, you know, of course, we have to talk about the last shot right here of the turkey flying, because correct me if I'm wrong, it's happened before, but I didn't think turkeys could fly like long distances, at least. I mean, they can scuttle off if prey, you know, to get away from
Yeah, I didn't think
danger.
They could either. I mean, apparently they can fly a little bit, but if you don't believe us, take a look at this. Here is a flying turkey. This is the research team's turkey drone, also built from a taxidermied bird. Now, this is obviously not meant to blend in with the environment. Hassanalian says this is more of a fun Thanksgiving project that will be used during school demonstrations to inspire younger students to think outside of the box.
We have a message for K-12, for the students, for the teachers, that if they think high, they can fly high. That sometimes we can be innovative and we make impossible possible. So Turkey doesn't fly by nature, but we'll fly it.
Hassan Alian wanted to make it clear that his team is not involved in the actual killing of any of these birds. They purchased them all already pre-taxidermied, so they're just doing the science stuff.
Cannot wait to see the social media comments once you post this story.
Oh, this will be fun.
All right, Griffin, thanks.
Sectarian violence in northwest Pakistan has claimed 13 more lives in the Khurram district, bringing the death toll to 124 in 10 days of fierce fighting. The clashes between the Sunni and the Shiite communities flared up after two Shiite convoys, were ambushed about 10 days ago. And about 40 plus people were killed. And since then, the region has been paralyzed with roads that have been blocked and communications cut off, making it literally impossible for the residents to even flee. Repeated ceasefire agreements have failed to hold, while land disputes and long-standing sectarian divisions have only added fuel to the fire. The police has regularly struggled to control the violence in Khurram that was part of the semi-autonomous federally administered tribal areas until it was merged with Khyber Pakhtunkhwa in 2018. The Human Rights Commission of Pakistan has said that at least 79 people have been killed in the region between July and October in the sectarian clashes. Meanwhile, in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, political tensions are simmering as the PTI leaders continue to protest against the federal crackdowns. Nearly 1,000 PTI workers have been arrested and demands for the release of the former Prime Minister Imran Khan have intensified. The Chief Minister of the province, Ali Amin Gandapur, has issued a warning against imposing governor's rule, vowing to resist any federal interference in the region.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has flown to Florida to meet with President-elect Donald Trump. The leaders are discussing Trump's threatened 25% tariffs on products from Canada and Mexico. Trudeau told reporters that he plans to point out that U.S. consumers would wind up paying the price for steep tariffs on goods from Canada.
After hours of emotional debate, members of the British Parliament have advanced a bill to legalize assisted dying. The bill would allow people with a terminal illness and less than 6 months to live to self-administer a substance to end their lives. Unlike in Canada or some U.S. states, doctors would not be able to legally administer the substance for someone. It could still be years before the final bill passes. It will now be studied by a parliamentary committee, and then after that, it will need final passage in both houses of parliament.
هو كان ماشي على طريق صلاح الدين بشكل طبيعي واعتيادي زي ما بمارس عمله يومي وبتحرك لشغله لدوامه على المخازن وعلى المطابخ بشكل طبيعي يوميا بدون اي مشكله وحتى لو كان في اي خطر مسبق بيكون هو مبلغ من ادارته ما بدخلش الطريق اللي فيها اي خطر او اي مشاكل واليوم كان مطالب بشكل طبيعي الصبح على دوامه على طريق صلاح الدين لانه تم استهدافه بدون اي سابق انذار او بدون اي سبب.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he's willing to hand over territory to Russia if it means ending the war. In an interview with Sky News, he says in exchange he wants NATO protection for other parts of the country. It comes on the heels of ongoing fighting. In the most recent attack, Russia unleashed a massive aerial assault against Ukraine's energy grid, resulting in massive power outages.
And a major escalation in the conflict in Syria. According to reports, Russian airstrikes on the Aleppo countryside have left at least 19 civilians dead.
Now, the airstrikes come as clashes between jihadist groups and Syrian government forces continue to rage in the country's northwest. The violence followed a surprise offensive by rebel factions, including Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which has led to heavy fighting across several front lines. As the conflict intensifies, more than 200 combatants have been killed, including dozens from both jihadist groups and the Syrian army.
I have been displaced for 5 years, but thank God I am now fighting to reclaim our land from the grip of the criminal regime. We will persevere on this path and call upon the youth at homes to join us in the struggle to take back our country.
Rebel forces have reportedly cut off a key highway linking Damascus and Aleppo, further disrupting supply lines and increasing pressure on the government-controlled areas.
Amidst the clashes, a senior Iranian military general, Qamar Khurshami, has been killed in Aleppo during the fighting. Iran, a strong ally of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, confirmed the death of the general who had been providing military advisory support to Syrian forces.
The flare-up in northern Syria has shaken the region, with tensions between the US, Israel and Iran complicating the situation. As the fighting continues and the death toll rises, the future of Syria remains increasingly uncertain.
The ruling party of the country of Georgia has suspended talks to join the European Union, causing an uproar. The opposition says this is because of a pro-Russian effort to rig recent parliamentary elections and turn the former Soviet republic back towards Moscow. Georgia is a nation of 3.6 million people between Russia and Turkey on the Black Sea. As protesters continue to fill the streets, Nick Schifrin reports on the future of a country that plays a pivotal role in U.S. influence across the region.
On the streets of the capital, Tbilisi, a fight for the country's future. Last night, Georgian police charged, arrested by the dozen, pepper sprayed, and even assaulted protesters and journalists. Thousands of Georgians demonstrated the government's decision to end talks with the European Union, armed only with flags, multi-generational indignity, and aspirations for a European future.
The government has been using excessive and disproportionate violence against peaceful protesters.
Standing right now in front of huge demonstration in Tbilisi.
Anna Dolidze is a former deputy defense minister and chair of the Opposition for the People Party. She and other opposition groups are boycotting parliament led by the Georgian Dream Party, denouncing the institution meant to represent Georgians as instead denying the desires of 80% of Georgians to join the EU.
This has been the cornerstone, Georgia's pro-European orientation, membership in NATO, and that there is an inscription in the Constitution that all government officials should aspire to implement Georgia's pro-Western course. Now, we are standing in front of a clearly pro-Russian power and a pro-Russian representative or a bastion in the South Caucasus.
More than 20 years ago, Georgia was the first ex-Soviet republic to launch a pro-democracy revolution. In 2008, Russian troops invaded northern Georgia and have occupied 20% of the nation ever since. The ruling Georgian Dream first won elections in 2012, financed by the billions of former Prime Minister Bidzina Ivanishvili, who made his fortune in various enterprises in post-Soviet Russia. In last month's election, Georgian Dream argued that aligning with the EU would lead to Ukraine-level destruction, and yesterday called EU demands that Georgia make reforms to its laws and institutions insulting.
They are asking from Georgia not reforms, but steps that would mean a rejection of our dignity.
That idea echoed today by the head of the Russian Parliament's International Affairs Committee, who wrote, quote, "The Georgians did not allow their country to be made a puppet of the West."
In no sense this should be minimized to a local democracy or authoritarianism issue. It's a geopolitical issue. Either we will be locked down in this camp, which is pro-Russian, we will be using Georgian territory for Russian projects, or we will remain a Western ally.
Local and international election observers argue the Georgian Dream government is illegitimate because last month's parliamentary election was marked by widespread fraud.
Elections have been always rigged under the Georgian Dream, but this time this was rigged in a way, in a much larger scale.
Sandro Baramidze is the executive director of Transparency International Georgia, an anti-corruption NGO that helped oversee more than 1,300 election observers.
Most of them have reported the endemic violation, paving way for the Georgian Dream.
His organization found instances of bribery, intimidation, and physical violence inside polling stations, and repeat voting, even ballot stuffing. When the Central Election Commission, considered controlled by the Georgian Dream, validated the results, an enraged opposition party member threw ink at the election chief. Both the EU and US have called for investigations.
The protests have continued, will continue. You'll continue to work internationally and domestically, but with all due respect, what power do you have?
Yes, the only power we have is high moral ground, which we really have. So that is people's choice, people's voice, and the peaceful nature of resistance. So we will continue, channeling the voice and the choice of the Georgian people, but we definitely need international attention and assistance.
And so protesters will keep fighting Georgian Dream to achieve their own European dreams. But so far, nothing is stopping the authorities from forcing the country's fate. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Nick Schifrin.